If the kitchen window had been closed that evening, if I had arrived 30 seconds later, my life would have gone very differently. The thought still keeps me awake at night. That's the part that still chills me. I remember stepping out of my old Ford pickup with a smile I hadn't worn in decades. My hands were trembling, not from age, but from excitement. Inside the leather folder under my arm was a miracle. My brother Leonard passed away, and somehow, before he died, he decided to leave everything to me. A mountain villa in Aspen, 4 apartments in downtown San Francisco, stocks worth millions, and $9.7 million in bank accounts. At 72 years old, after 48 years of repairing engines at a roadside service station, I was suddenly richer than anyone I had ever known. But the money wasn't why I drove to Nellie's house that night. I drove there because my daughter had looked tired for years. Not physically, deep soul tired. I wanted to change her life. I imagined her crying when I told her I'd pay off the mortgage. I imagined my granddaughter Ava going to college debt-free. I imagined Nellie finally painting again instead of sitting in that gray office she hated. When she was 11, she painted roses on our garage wall with leftover house paint. My late wife, Martha, kissed her forehead and whispered, "Don't scrub it off. One day that girl's gonna be an artist." Her husband, Victor, destroyed that part of her slowly. I just hadn't admitted it yet. I walked toward the side gate. Then I heard Victor's voice through the open kitchen window, and my entire world stopped. "Your father's becoming a walking burden, Nellie, a freeloader." Silence. Then my daughter spoke softly. "Please don't say that." "I'm talking reality," he snapped. "The man's 72. He forgets everything. He might be telling the same story 3 times in one evening. He must be having déjà vu. Half the time he looks confused." Confused. A lie. My jaw tightened. Last week I rebuilt a transmission by myself. Then Victor lowered his voice. "You know what we should do? Get power of attorney before his brain completely melts." I physically grabbed the fence to steady myself. Inside the kitchen, dishes clinked nervously. Nellie sounded horrified. "He trusts me, Victor." "Exactly," he replied coldly. "You slide papers in front of him, he signs them, and we control everything. Sell his house, put him somewhere cheap, for example, a nursing home. Problem solved." Problem solved. Not father, not grandfather. Problem. And then I heard something that nearly broke me. My daughter started crying quietly. Not loud crying, the kind a woman does when she's already learned nobody's coming to help her. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. My little girl was afraid of her own husband. He'd been preparing for this for a long time. The hardest thing I've ever done in my life wasn't burying my wife. It was pretending my mind was falling apart while my daughter watched it happen. For weeks, I turned myself into prey, and Victor took the bait faster than I expected. Every Sunday, I arrived at their house looking a little worse than the week before. Untucked flannel shirt, mismatched socks, unshaven face. I even started carrying an old notebook, pretending I couldn't remember appointments unless I wrote them down. Victor noticed everything. Predators always do. At dinner, I deliberately repeated the same story 3 times. "The old Chevy transmission slipped clean out of the frame," I said. 10 minutes later, I told it again, then again. Victor and Nellie exchanged glances across the table. Exactly what I wanted.
"You already told us that, Dad," Nellie said softly. I looked down at my plate and forced my voice to shake. "Did I? Sorry, sweetheart. Guess the old gears are slipping. Oh wait, why's my plate empty? Did I really eat it all? I don't remember that." The pain in her eyes almost made me stop the whole act right there. But Victor? Victor leaned back in his chair, smiling like a man watching a safe slowly unlock. That smile told me everything. A week later, I escalated the performance. I purposely left my truck running outside for 20 minutes. Victor rushed out dramatically. "Francis, Jesus Christ, you forgot the ignition again!" I stared at him blankly. Did I? That night, I overheard him whispering in the hallway. "He's getting worse, Nellie. He's still my father, and soon he won't even know what he's signing." My stomach turned cold. Not if, when. Victor had already decided my mind belonged to him. Then came the moment that nearly broke me. My granddaughter, Ava, climbed into my lap after dinner, holding a drawing she made at school. "Grandpa," she whispered, "Mommy cries when you leave now." I felt my throat close instantly. "What do you mean, Pumpkin? She thinks you're sick." For one dangerous second, I almost told her everything. Almost. Instead, I hugged her tightly and kissed the top of her head. Because at that moment, I realized the truth. Victor wasn't just trying to steal my money anymore. He was slowly teaching my family to bury me while I was still alive. The first real crack in Victor's mask appeared on a Thursday night, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. He came to my house uninvited, carrying a bottle of expensive whiskey he definitely couldn't afford. The moment I opened the door, I smelled desperation on him stronger than the alcohol. "Thought you might need company, Francis," he said with a forced smile. No, he thought I was close to collapsing, and predators circle when they smell weakness. I invited him inside anyway. That night, I staged everything carefully. Unpaid utility bills spread across the kitchen table, my reading glasses forgotten in the refrigerator, a burnt saucepan still sitting on the stove. Victor noticed every detail like a scavenger inspecting roadkill. Then he delivered the performance of his life. "You know," he said softly, pouring himself whiskey without asking, "Nellie's worried about you." I lowered my eyes and rubbed my hands together slightly. "I've been forgetting things lately." Victor leaned forward immediately, hook set. "There's no shame in aging. Happens to everybody." The fake compassion in his voice made my skin crawl. Then came the real attack. "There's this retirement community outside Sacramento. Affordable, quiet, nurses on site 24/7. Affordable, that word again. Cheap enough to hide me away while he emptied my life. I pretended confusion. "You really think I need something like that?" Victor sighed dramatically like a concerned son. "I think you need people you can trust." Trust. I looked at him weakly and whispered, Maybe it's time to sign those papers." Victor froze. For one split second, pure greed flashed across his face so openly it terrified me. Not relief, not concern, hunger. That's when I knew something chilling. Victor wasn't trying to help an old man. He was counting down the days I legally disappeared. That same night, after Victor left my house grinning like a man who already owned my future, I drove straight to downtown San Francisco to meet Gloria Ramirez. And that meeting changed everything. Gloria didn't waste words. She listened to my story in complete silence, occasionally writing notes with a silver pen as her expression grew colder and colder.
When I finished, she folded her hands calmly. "Mr. Holloway," she said, "men like your son-in-law usually leave footprints everywhere. The question is how deep they go." The next morning, she brought in Martin Keller, a forensic accountant and auditor who'd spent 20 years untangling fraud cases for banks and federal investigators. 3 days later, Martin called us into Gloria's office. I will never forget the look on his face. Not surprise, not anger, professional disgust. He spread documents across the conference table one after another. Credit reports, bank statements, casino transaction records, mortgage filings. Every page felt like another punch to the chest. "Your son-in-law is financially underwater," Martin said flatly. "Completely." Victor had secretly opened multiple lines of credit using Nellie's name and social security information. Every account was maxed out nearly to the limit. 40,000 here, 12,000 there, another 23,000 hidden under retail financing accounts. Nellie had no idea. But the worst part came next. Martin slid over a mortgage document. This signature was forged. I stared at it. Nellie's name sat at the bottom in shaky cursive. Victor had taken out a second mortgage against their home without her knowledge. He needed fast cash, Martin explained, which lines up with the casino records. Then he showed me withdrawal reports from casinos across Nevada and California. $79,000 lost in less than 11 months. Blackjack, sports betting, high-limit poker rooms. The man wasn't simply irresponsible. He was addicted, chronically, dangerously. And addicts always need more money. But Gloria hadn't finished. "There's another issue," she said quietly. She handed me a separate file stamped with investigation notices from neighboring states. Victor's name had surfaced in multiple financial fraud complaints involving missing client funds, falsified investment paperwork, and unauthorized account transfers. Federal investigators were already watching him. That was the moment the entire picture finally became clear to me. Victor wasn't preparing to steal from me someday. He was desperate to steal from me now, because his entire life was already collapsing behind the scenes. For the next several days, I let Victor believe he was winning. That part mattered. Men like Victor become careless the moment they think control is finally slipping into their hands. He started calling me more often after our conversation at my house, sometimes twice a day, always checking, always probing. "You remember we're meeting Friday, right, Francis?" I'd pause deliberately before answering. "Friday?" "The paperwork," he'd remind me gently, almost eagerly. "Your future planning." Then I'd mumble something uncertain. "Oh, right. Thank God you're helping me with all this." Every single time, his voice warmed with satisfaction. Hook deeper, line tighter. Meanwhile, Gloria Ramirez and Martin Keller were moving fast behind the scenes. They coordinated directly with financial crimes investigators who were already building cases tied to Victor's fraud activity in neighboring states. The evidence grew uglier by the hour. One investigator even uncovered surveillance footage placing Victor inside a Nevada casino less than 24 hours after telling Nellie he was traveling for business. By Thursday afternoon, the detective assigned to the case called Gloria personally. "We're ready," he said. That night, I barely slept, not because I was afraid for myself anymore, because of Nellie. I kept remembering her crying quietly in that kitchen while Victor talked about burying me in some cheap nursing home like unwanted furniture. I realized something painful then. My daughter had been surviving emotionally for years, not living. Friday morning arrived cold and gray. Victor texted me at 8:14 a.m.
"Looking forward to helping you today, Francis." Helping. The word made my jaw tighten. "Victor, come over to my place at 2 p.m. and we'll sign the papers," I said. At noon, Gloria called one final time. "Everything is in place," she said calmly. "The detective and officers will already be seated before Victor arrives." I stared out my kitchen window at the empty street for a long moment. Then I picked up the black leather folder containing my inheritance papers. The same folder I almost carried into Nellie's house weeks earlier. Only now, it wasn't a gift. It was evidence. And today, Victor Kane's entire life was going to collapse in front of everyone he lied to. Victor walked into my house smiling. That was the unforgettable part. He genuinely believed he'd won. He arrived 15 minutes early wearing a tailored charcoal suit, polished shoes, and a silver watch that probably cost more than my first 3 cars combined. A man drowning in debt, pretending to be successful right up to the end. Nellie walked beside me, looking pale and exhausted. She barely touched my arm when she hugged me. "Dad, are you sure about this?" she whispered nervously. I looked into her tired eyes and answered quietly, "I'm sure it ends today." The moment Victor stepped through the glass doors of my office, his smile vanished. Inside the room sat Gloria, a forensic accountant, a financial crimes detective, and 2 police officers. Victor stopped dead. "What the hell is this?" "Sit down, Mr. Kane," Gloria said coldly. For the first time since I'd known him, Victor looked afraid. Real fear, the kind that drains color from a man's face. Slowly, he sat down. I opened the black leather folder in front of me. 2 months ago, my brother Leonard left me an estate worth $9.7 million. Victor's eyes widened instantly. Even cornered, greed still reacted first. Disgusting. I continued speaking. "I came to Nellie's house to share the news. Then I overheard you planning to forge power of attorney documents, sell my home, and dump me into a cheap nursing facility." Nellie gasped softly beside me. Victor immediately pointed at her. "She knew nothing. This is all a misunderstanding." Then Gloria slid photographs and financial records across the table, one by one. Forged signatures, secret credit lines, casino transactions, second mortgage documents, federal fraud investigations. Every lie laid bare. Nellie's hands began trembling violently. "Victor," she whispered, staring at the papers, "you used my name?" Victor reached towards her desperately. "Baby, listen to me. Don't touch me." Her voice cracked so painfully, even the detective looked away. Then came the final blow. The detective stood up. "Victor Kane, you are arrested for fraud, forgery, identity theft, and financial misconduct." The handcuffs clicked shut, and suddenly Victor looked exactly what he truly was beneath the expensive suits and fake smiles. Small, very small. As officers led him towards the door for one last time, he turned towards Nellie, but she was already crying in my arms. Not because she lost him, because she finally saw who he really was.
Victor received 9 years in federal prison. When the judge read the sentence, he finally stopped looking arrogant. For the first time, I saw panic behind his eyes. Real panic. The kind a man feels when he realizes manipulation no longer works. Nellie never looked at him again. The divorce was finalized 6 months later, and that's when the real rebuilding began. I bought Nellie a quiet house just outside San Francisco, with tall maple trees and sunlight pouring through enormous windows. The first thing she carried inside wasn't clothes. It was an old paint box she hadn't touched in years. 3 weeks later, I walked into her new studio and stopped cold. On the canvas was our old garage from 30 years ago, and painted on the side of it was a tiny bluebird, exactly like the one she painted as a little girl. "You remembered," I whispered. Nellie smiled through tears. I never forgot Dad. I just forgot myself for a while. That nearly broke me. I funded college accounts for Ava and Sophie. We spent summers at the mountain villa Leonard left me, sitting on the porch at sunset while the girls laughed louder than I'd heard in years. Then one evening, Ava asked me a question I'll carry to my grave. "Grandpa, when did you become rich?" I looked toward the house where Nellie stood painting peacefully by the window, and I answered honestly. "Not when I inherited the money." She frowned. "Then when?" I smiled slowly. "The day your mother stopped being afraid and made the right decision for the good of her family." Ava didn't fully understand. Maybe she will someday. Because real wealth isn't stocks, or houses, or millions in the bank. Real wealth is hearing your child laugh and see a happy face again after thinking life had stolen that forever.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.